Sawyer Robertson has committed to Baylor football, and he is in Waco. Could he be the answer for this team's struggles? This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Baylor. Drake Toll from Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears here with you alongside Baylor grad. And Sean, I am going to dub you the Sawyer Robertson expert because this guy has watched him play from the very beginning and has some keen insight on what the Bears are getting here in Waco. Thank you, Sean, and everybody else out there for making Locked On Baylor their first listen every single day. And to jump right in, I mean, you got kind of a up close and personal glimpse of Sawyer early on. How did that start?
Yep, no, absolutely. Appreciate having me, Drake. So, I started seeing, I think first game I saw Sawyer's in 2018. So my little brother was playing against Coronado. He went to a different school in Lubbock. So remember, going to that game and seeing Sawyer as a sophomore, it was like, this kid's got it. It was pretty clear at that time. It was probably one of the best high school games I've ever saw, to be honest. It's a back and forth game. Sawyer's team did end up losing at the end of the day, but watching it, I was like, man, that guy would be hell of a fit at Baylor at the end of the day. I think we just come off a 1-win season at that point. So, in the big scheme of things, it's like, okay, we're probably not going to snag him. So watched him, through that year. And then, I'm a big nerd when it comes to high school football and just kind of keeping up with, teams I have ties to. So with Coronado being high school I went to, kept up with him and watched him sophomore, junior, senior year. And I mean, it was clear he was something different. Lubbock Coronado by no means is a juggernaut high school team at all. And the things he was able to do there were, never happened before at that high school at the end of the day. So watching him, year in, year out, we keep getting better. It was always a kind of a wish list thing. He ended up at Baylor and, now we're here. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Sean. My birthday is January 17th. The day this is airing, by the way. We are, to rip the curtain back, as I say always, we are recording just on the doorstep of the Dallas Cowboys game. So we have no idea what's going to happen in that game. By the time this airs, the world will know, and it will be my birthday. This was the best early birthday present I think I've ever gotten in my life. Not that Sawyer Robertson was for me, but his commitment to Baylor has made my last week so much better. And you've already mentioned kind of some of the game-changing things that he at least had the eye tests very early on under head coach Seth Parr at Coronado, who's now at Aranda and leading them to a lot of success. I mean, kind of a diamond in the rough for a school who's not used to having that caliber of athlete. What made him so good despite him being so young?
I think it's, you've talked about it, so have all the other Baylor folks. I mean, it's when it comes to, prototypical passer, I mean, he's got the size, he's got the arm strength. The big thing at the end of the day was, it's clear, his ability to win. That's very cliche. But I went back and looked and I was just out of curiosity. So since I left Coronado, there's been 13 high school seasons. And I think Sawyer accounts for 40% of the wins in those 13 years. So, I mean, it's, the numbers, however many, hundreds of touchdowns. I think it was, probably 120, 130 plus. That's one thing that's heck of a stat at the end of the day, but just his ability to win was huge. I think it was probably that 2018 year as well. So when he was young, it was a rivalry game, another Lubbock school. And I was keeping up with it. I think it was just on the radio. And they were down 3 touchdowns. I think they're either started the fourth quarter or into the third quarter. And he brought them back to win. So just that kind of thing, numbers are one thing, but the ability to win is a whole different story. So again, it's, Lubbock or West Texas kids don't get a lot of, attention when it comes to recruiting. It's just not the same hotbed. It's much cheaper and efficient for coaches to go out to the Metroplex, Houston, Austin to recruit than it is to go all the way out to Lubbock, where there's not quite as much talent at the end of the day, just, pure numbers. So his ability to, win, get attention, and, really, start to put some of those teams and some of that talent on the map was a huge difference maker.
You mentioned that he was able to put Coronado on the map. I mean, is this You mentioned you've followed Coronado for the better part of 20 plus years. Is this the best kid that has come through, the biggest game changer that has come through?
Yeah, so they had a kid right before. I think his name Quay maybe Johnson. I can't remember. So he was, I think, Seth Parr's first quarterback. So he put up
Mm.
big time numbers. And that's, I think, my concern at the end of the day is, and I don't think it's the case, but the system quarterback thing. Seth Parr's had great success everywhere. So it's
Yeah.
how much of that is the system and Coach Parr versus what he's doing. So Quay was right before him, and then back when, ooh, it was when I was early in high school. There's a kid, Austin Uzalik, who went and played at Tech. He was quarterback that could run 4.3, 4.4. He ended up playing receiver at Tech, punt returner, that kind of thing. But aside from them, yeah, Sawyer was by far, the most notable athlete to come through.
Yeah, it's tough not to make a Mount Rushmore anywhere with 12,000
Yeah.
yards, 146 touchdowns, only 22 picks, 65% passing. He was there. He like that. That guy's, the numbers have got it. 6'4", 200 pounds. There's not really much you can tell me that is a downside to Sawyer Robertson. But Sean, I'm going to force you into that. You mentioned there's a possibility that maybe he's a system quarterback, and Seth Parr has had so many quarterbacks who look the exact same. I got to see one at Aranda this year who's a commit to Louisiana Tech. What could be the possible downsides here for Baylor's, what a lot of us hope is Baylor's future?
Yeah, no, and I definitely don't think there's many of them, but I mean, I think it comes down to the adjustment, getting to that college level, how he adjusts. It's, so much of what he did. And I can't remember who it was. Someone mentioned it on Baylor Twitter, he always goes to the first read, but at the end of the day, that's how the system is set up for him. So when you're throwing that many yards, it's hard to not going with the first read. So how will he adjust? There's a few games there, really, I guess, primarily in the playoffs, where they ran into, good Metroplex teams. A few of the Denton teams, I believe, Red Oak, I think was maybe his senior year, which was a heck of a game where they got, a different level of talent at the end of the day, that kind of forced him to do things differently. So at the end of the day, is, how will he adjust to that? I think that's going to be the biggest question, is how he'll adjust to the speed and just the different schemes at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, he's got less than 20 passes at Mississippi State. So you're looking at a guy that doesn't yet have the college experience in games on Saturdays, but has at least been in practices against an SEC defense. To granted, not one of the better SEC defenses in Mississippi State, but has that experience. So, Sean, I want your general op-ed column opinion on the progression of a kid like this and whether or not he could step on the field and be a contributor for Baylor next season. But first, I got to tell everybody at home, and trust me, Sean is going nowhere, about betonline.net is the number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. I am wearing a Cowboys pullover. This is like a rain jacket. My heart says Cowboys -3. By the way, you've already seen this game. When this is airing, you've already seen this game. I don't know what's going to happen yet. I don't. But everything else says Tampa Bay money line. What do? I don't know. I go to betonline.net. I look at all the podcasts. They have all the analysis of these games. They have basketball. They have NBA basketball, college basketball, the NFL, the playoffs. Already opening up lines for next Saturday's games. The Jags and the Chiefs. Trevor Lawrence is like 52, 53-0 on Saturday in his last 50-plus games. I like that a lot. Even though the Chiefs are really good, numbers don't lie. They've got it all at betonline.net. You can make those picks. If you love sports podcasts, that's one of the big things that are growing there at BetOnline as well. Use your mobile device. Go there today. BetOnline is where the game starts. You literally cannot start the game until you go to BetOnline. Sean, Blake Shapen last year did not have the best year at the whole quarterback thing. So look, Sean, you Baylor alumni, follow the sport, right? Have seen Sawyer Robertson play multiple times. Is this a guy who deserves to walk in day one and have a shot based on what you've seen him do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's, I think anyone that's, there deserves a shot regardless. But I think it'd be a different story if this year turned out different. There are concerns for sure with, I guess, kind of the way the season played out for Shapen, especially given, the line that was coming back, that was supposed to be, I think that's why everyone, said, hey, Baylor's Big 12 favorite largely because of that line. But it's, his inability, I guess, to get rid of the ball. It was, we were young at the skill positions at the end of the day. That was a big challenge. But, I think something, that I remember seeing from Sawyer is how quick he gets rid of the ball. It is whether it's play action or just quick passes, he gets the ball in the hands of guys that can make plays, which is huge, as opposed to hold on to the ball. He can throw the deep ball, but at the end of the day, yeah, absolutely. I think deserves a chance. I was a big Shapen fan, still am. He's a Baylor guy, but it's definitely the way the season played out. There's questions there, and at worst case, it pushes Shapen to be better. Gives it some motivation there that there's a guy right on his tail. But I think open quarterback competition from day one should be the case.
Yeah, I have made the point on the podcast multiple times. Maybe Blake Shapen has just a transformational, different offseason. I don't know what that would take for, like, I bring up Max Duggan, right? He was not very good at football. He was the backup, and then a new staff comes in. He gets a shot, and he's great. There's not really a new staff at Baylor to bring that for Blake Shapen, but somebody in there could help him skyrocket him to a great offseason that puts him as a Big 12 caliber quarterback. He didn't really reach this past season in a lot of his games. Sawyer Robertson, though, from high school to now, the tape that he's put on, at least at practice that we've got to watch a little bit from Mississippi State, is he, this is a loaded question, Sean. I know you're like, this is a tough one to answer. To you, do you see maybe a higher ceiling, better potential, or is he just playing better than Blake Shapen?
That's tough to say at the end of the day, because the film we have is primarily high school. And if you're comparing Blake Shapen's film and say that Big 12 championship and the couple games beforehand, he looked like a Heisman contender at the end of the day. It's just so hard to say how it's going to play out.
It's tough. I told you, Sean. It's tough.
Yeah. It's giving someone else a chance. Sure, that may be the best call. I think it was the lack of seeing Shapen get better. I think when the option was made to go with Shapen as opposed to Bohannon, the whole thing was being able to throw the ball, get the ball downfield, and that didn't play out. So what does Shapen now have that Sawyer doesn't? And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think upside may be better. But if we would have backed this up a year ago, then we thought Shapen's ceiling was again, Heisman level. So it's hard to say at the end of the day. But.
Yeah, the dude broke a facility record at AT&T Stadium. So, I mean, look, it may sound wild to say Heisman level, but there were a lot of us that said, okay, if the guy has a breakout year, he could be one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks in the Big 12. Doesn't pan out, and now Sawyer Robertson steps in to, I don't want to say save the day, but at least give you a new element to the quarterback room that I don't think is done being constructed. But a lot of this goes back to, and maybe the reason that Sawyer Robertson is on campus right now goes back to the fact that Austin Novosad is at Oregon. I know you followed a lot of the Austin Novosad stuff. Is this a fair trade to get now Sawyer Robertson over Austin Novosad effectively?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm pumped about it. I think I think you touched on it at some point in one of your shows. The concern with Novosad, everyone was pumped about it, but it was at the end of the day he flipped. There was not the loyalty to Baylor. I think everything I've heard about Sawyer, about his family, that kind of thing, that he's a great kid. He's well raised, that kind of thing, and no knock on Novosad at all. Ultimately, if someone offered me, the kind of money that he supposedly got, I'd probably do the same thing. But I think we do have that loyalty with Sawyer now that he's here, especially us being the second school. More than likely not going to hop around. I think at the end of the day, we know that there's someone going to be there for the long haul. And skill wise, I think he's right there with him for sure. My biggest concern, maybe going back as I think about your previous question, is we've had so much inconsistency at the quarterback position. Whether it's not only play but who's going to be the starter, and we've seen that impact. I think our ability to recruit, and get guys in because they're seeing 1 year quarterbacks. Someone gets benched for the next one. So what kind of trend and precedent does that set if in back-to-back years we have a starting quarterback that then gets beat out. So that's at the end of the day, if Sawyer's the right guy, or even if there was no side coming in, that's the success of the team is number one. But long term, how does that play out when it comes to recruiting quarterbacks?
Yeah, there's a question mark there. There's definitely a question mark there. And maybe I'll pitch this to you, since you got to see him way before I did. I mean, I didn't know the name Sawyer Robertson until a month ago. I follow Baylor. And even Larry Fedora didn't know the name Sawyer Robertson until it was too late. And that's maybe why Baylor didn't get him from jump. Sean, before we get into a bit of a preview of Baylor and Texas Tech that is happening now tonight when this airs, give me your number one about Sawyer Robertson. What is it? Because, look, there have been a lot of players who have come through the doors at Baylor, and very few who I've had people say, look, I saw this kid in high school, and he's different. He's special. Like, I'm so passionate about this player that I'd love to talk about him. And you've done that with Sawyer Robertson and brought that perspective. What is it about him that makes you that high on him? What's that number one thing?
It's the winning thing, like I mentioned, the winning. For me, it's watching him. It gives Bryce Petty vibes. Bryce Petty was the guy when, I guess when I was there, seeing him and just, it's that big quarterback, can throw the ball, can move, is sneaky, that sneaky mobility, can get out of situations as needed, which is huge. So I think it's just, maybe it's the nostalgia of saying, hey, this might be a Bryce Petty.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we'll see how his game compares to Bryce Petty, but it's very, very similar vibes. And watching him, it's like, okay, this looks familiar.
For the last 8 years, people have been saying, where is Bryce Petty? Where are these guys that could step up and be the old RG3s? And maybe, we thought maybe Austin Novosad was that, but I like Sawyer Robertson and the trajectory, the fact he's got a couple years of college under his belt to probably, hopefully, bring that to Baylor. And
Yep.
Sean, one thing I need brought to Baylor is another men's basketball win to get to 500 in the conference. But before we break that down, I also want a Built bar. I told you I've been doing Built bars in the morning now because they are low fat. They don't have a lot of calories, and you got to try them. So the holidays are over, and my goal has been to eat healthier this year. I've been playing basketball a lot with the guys, been going out. I didn't have the most healthy Christmas break. College we get like a month. And so I went on some trips, splurged a little bit. Now I got to get back to my health kick. So I've been playing some basketball, playing some tennis, trying to stay active. I'm in beginner tennis. Class starts today, by the way. There's a lot of stuff going on today. So I've gotten Built Bar back into my routine. It's healthy. It's tasty. It is, I like to say delicious, my favorite word to describe it, in only 130 calories. Delicious in 130 calories with 4 grams of sugar, only 4 grams of sugar, whopping 17 grams of protein. So right now, we are so stoked that Built Bar can be ordered at Built.com or at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. 4-bar box of cookies and cream at Walmart, the 13-bar box of brownie butter and churro at Sam's Club. You can thank me later. All that and more also at Built.com. That is Built Bar. Sean, tonight, Baylor men's basketball against Texas Tech. The Bears have won 2 straight in Big 12 play. Texas Tech has lost 5 straight in Big 12 play. And I saw a tweet that restored my faith completely in Baylor men's basketball. Every loss this team, all 5 of them, has had this season have been to a team currently ranked in the top 20 of the AP poll. Maybe this team never really was bad, quote unquote, just playing elite competition literally every night.
Yeah. Nope, I'm with you. I think it's a heck of a lot better team than we give them credit for. My concern is, we still see mistakes that we haven't seen in past years, whether that's defensively, offensive miscues, that kind of thing. That's still a little bit my concern, but it's still early at the end of the day. It's still, a pretty new team. So, I'm not concerned at this point, but I'm with you. We're not near as bad as we initially thought we were.
Yeah, I came out a couple weeks ago and was like, Baylor, or a week ago, said Baylor basketball is not where it needs to be, which is true. And I was probably a little more dramatic than I should have been it wasn't a downfall necessarily, but it looked disastrous. And now with 2 more wins, the uptrend is there. But this feels like it could be a backbreaker for Texas Tech. They've got Baylor at home tonight. If they lose that game, they drop to 0-6 in conference play. Then they go on the road to Kansas State. They lose that, sitting at 0-7. this is where Tech has to turn their season around if they want to go to the NCAA tournament. There's a lot on the line for Texas Tech, and that to me is scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Tech's still a great team. They've got some players, his name Pop Isaacs, and then the transfer that they got, the center, Farwad, something along those lines. He just got back last game, looked pretty good against UT. Tech's a good team, and I think, despite the current record, that's scary, especially playing in Lubbock. I born and raised in Lubbock, and of any team that I hate to lose to, I root for Tech unless they're playing Baylor, but I hate losing Tech because that's a tough one to take. I know too many people there get way too much crap anytime that happens. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping we pull it out, but I think it's Tech is winning in Lubbock that's tough. That's my biggest concern is Lubbock. If it was in Waco, I'd feel good about it. In Lubbock, I'm a little more concerned.
United Supermarkets Arena, maybe the wildest arena name in America, is where dreams go to die. And Oklahoma has gotten a win there this year. Kansas has gotten a win there this year. But the OU game was in overtime. The Kansas game was by 3. Tech's losses on the road to Texas were by 2. On the road to TCU by 6. They got blown out against Iowa State. But 4 of their games could have easily, with the change of a basket or a foul call, flipped to be Texas Tech wins. And you could say the same for Baylor. I mean, flip around a couple things for Baylor. This team is 4-1 in Big 12 play. And I go back to that TCU game, go back to the Kansas State game. Gosh, this team has just caught some bad breaks this year.
Yeah, and I think both teams have, and that's I think life in the Big 12 is those standings. A handful of plays across the entire league, the standings could all of a sudden be flipped. So that's the biggest thing. So it's so hard to say, this team's bad. In the past, there was, say the bottom 2 or 3 teams, you could mark those off, and in theory, those are given wins. It's not the case anymore. Especially going in there playing Tech. They, just like you said, they've had some close games against some really good teams, potentially teams that at this point might be better than us. Who knows how that's going to go. In my mind, it's going to come down so much to, obviously, Keontae's, he's the man, but he's going to, I think he's going to put up his, 25, ish points. That's a given. I think watching the last few weeks, the key is going to come down to, Cryer. I think that's a big aspect. I think Flagler's going to get his points, have his production. But for me, it's going to come out of also Bridges and then Thamba. What kind of production do those guys have? Because, for, a number of games there, we were trying to get all the points out of the guard position. And, by no means do I think Thamba or Bridges need to put up 20 points, but we've got to get something out of them. Because, the guards, people know that's how they get beat by us is, letting the guards, start shooting the 3 and getting the basket.
Yeah, that I think you hit the nail on the head. This team's probably going to run through Keontae George, and if you're going to add in one extra element that needs to be consistent every night, and you say it's LJ Cryer, I'm with you. I truly believe that LJ Cryer is kind of the third piece behind. I trust right now Keontae George and Adam Flagler more than LJ Cryer, despite the fact that he's still putting up 14 points per game. I guess I'm waiting for that to become a little more consistent. And I say that, I pull it up right here. He has scored 16, 13, 4, 13, and 11 in his last 5 games. So maybe he is providing it. I'm just not noticing it. But once he hits like the Keontae George streak, if I'm going to put up a 20-point game one night, man, I'm telling you, I'm waiting for the night where all 3 of those guys are pushing 30 points, and this Baylor offense is led by that 3-headed monster, because we saw it in 2021. And if this team can get back to that, that's when it becomes a national championship caliber squad.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the 2021 team. You knew, Butler, Mitchell, and Teague. Every night those guys were going to, be at least good, if not great. The 3 of them, but it was rare that I recall ever seeing one of those guys just have a straight up bad night. And that's what I think made that team so good. And I think that's where ultimately this team success will hinge on, is having those 3 together. It's. I think at the beginning of the year, we thought we had maybe more guard potential. I think, we're seeing some from some of the other guys that are starting to pick it up. But at the end of the day, I think we at least have to have 3 guards that are consistently putting up points because we don't have enough big men at the end of the day.
Yeah, we were ready for more guard depth at the very least. That was something that we all had talked about was, okay, this team's really deep. You haven't seen you've seen depth, but not consistency with the depth so far this year. That's got to flip. But Baylor, Texas Tech tonight, 8 p.m. matchup. Way too late on ESPNU. 8 p.m.'s the worst, almost as bad as 8:30, which is also on the docket this year for the Bears. Sean, I want to thank you for joining the show today, giving your perspective on Sawyer Robertson, the impact he'll have at Baylor right away, what he came from and who he was, a high school player now into the program for Dave Aranda, and your thoughts on Baylor basketball too. That was awesome.
Absolutely. No, appreciate having me, Trent. It was a time.
Absolutely. Sean, thanks again. Go follow Sean at Sean_Michael_F. I got that right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a little long, but yeah, that's the one.
Nailed it. And for everybody else out there, you can find my stuff at Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears or right here at Locked On Baylor and at Locked On Baylor on Twitter. This has been, always will be, Brandon McKinnon breaks down the Texas Tech game tonight on tomorrow's show with a complete recap on Locked On Baylor.